Jackson Hewitt's next installment of Tax Talk Live. And today's topic, timely though it is, your ultimate guide for last minute filing. And I know that's not everybody because about 40% of people have filed, but about 60%, well over 100 million, have not filed. And so I guess I'm speaking directly to you, although as we'll go through today's content in pretty fast fashion, there may be some stuff you pick up even if you filed that you might want to be aware of. So again, last minute guide to tax filing tips. I've got 5. We're going to go through them pretty quickly. I'll give you the tips. And then if we have a little bit of time remaining, we'll answer any questions that you might have that you've posted out to the private chat if you've logged in. So without any further ado, thank you for being here. Let's get started. If you've not filed, it's been a crazy tax season and it continues to be one. As I mentioned, a lot of people have historically filed by now, but this year, tax year 2021, processing year 2022, a lot more people than normal have not filed. Waiting for the last minute. Maybe they thought there was going to be a law change. Maybe you mistakenly think that there's going to be an extension of time, and we'll get to that, but there will not be a delay to the April 18th deadline. So what do you need to know? What do you need to do now? The first thing you need to know, it's a really simple tip. File now. File as soon as you can. Why wait? 3 out of 4 people have historically got a tax refund. This year so far, the data is trending that refunds are up about 13%, at least on the federal side. So file as soon as you can. It's smart money. You don't have to be a financial savant to know if you're waiting on money, you file your tax return, you get money. So file soon. I know that's probably not a great tip to a lot of you, but if you've not filed, it's a good tip. The second one, when you're ready to file your taxes, be ready. Have your whole shoebox, have your envelope, have your materials handy. The whole, I'm missing that, I'll just estimate it, that doesn't play in 2021. If you estimate or guesstimate, that can lead to an error, and an error can lead to a delay or an IRS notice or worse, an audit. So be ready with your documents. That includes information related to your advanced child tax credit payments, if you got those, your stimulus payments, if you've got those, especially if you've got a new child in 2021 and you're due more, but have your information ready. And it's not a requirement, but I always like to say, have last year's tax return. It's a smart play and a best practice to jumpstart your tax preparation experience. And a good tax pro will really welcome that. Again, with 26 days left to go, some of you may be thinking, well, I'll just file an extension. After all, the Form 4868 is called an automatic 6-month extension. Well, a couple of points on tip number 3, an extension might not mean what you think it's going to mean. First of all, it's only an extension of time to file your paperwork. If you're one of those people that thinks I'm going to file later because I don't have money and I'm going to owe, it's not an extension of time to pay. It's an extension of time to file. You still have to file your taxes and pay your taxes by the deadline or have risk. But what we find at Jackson Hewitt is very simply this. When people come in and say, yeah, I'm not really ready, I've got most of my stuff, but I'm going to need to extend. With a little bit of work, with a little bit of effort, if you're missing a W-2, if you're missing a broker statement or some other document which can be achieved with a phone call or a download on the web or the internet or contacting that bank or broker, you can get all your information pretty quickly. And so a lot of people have gotten a lot better at that since the pandemic. So an extension of time to file, not to pay. And once you've got that all worked up, you may be surprised, friendly enough, that you have all the data that you need. And so don't count on an extension to do anything more than buy you some time to actually send your paperwork in or mail your paperwork. Back to tip number 1, file as soon as you can, which kind of relates to the extension one. If you file early, you get your money early. We kind of established that. But if you file early because you think you're going to owe and you don't have the money to pay, you still don't have to pay until April 18th or the last day of tax season, this year, the 18th. So filing early has 2 benefits. If you're due money, your money gets started at processing right away. And as we've seen so far this season, 9 out of 10 people are getting their money in about 21 days. But if you put it off, if you're procrastinating, if you've not filed because you think you might owe, still get your taxes done now. And if you're wrong and you get a refund, great for you. If you owe, you file now, you lock your data up with the IRS, which is always good in these days of data thief. And also, you don't have to write a check or have your bank account drafted or put it on a credit card or arrange an installment plan until April 18th. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So file early, be ready when you file, and don't count on an extension are my first 3. My 4th one's also kind of a simple one, but we've seen it so far in the last few weeks. File the easiest way for you with the fewest headaches. Now that you've waited to the last 26 days and you're not alone with 100 million people probably lining up to either extend or file, you need to find a way to do it conveniently. and efficiently. I always recommend a tax pro, but we'll talk about doing it yourself in a moment. But if you find a tax pro you like, and I like Jackson Hewitt, you've got several choices to make. You can walk into an office. You can go to the website and make an appointment just by clicking on the website and putting in the zip code where you live, and up will pop addresses. You click on there to make an appointment, or you can make an appointment to come in and just drop off your junk and then leave and have it prepared virtually by a tax pro from home. So you have several options as it relates to pro prep, and then we have several options if you want to do it yourself. We have a DIY platform like a lot of great companies, but ours is kind of outstanding if you go and look at prices. Again, I'm not going to pitch on the price front here, except to say we have the commanding, most transparent price in the industry. Take a look at it. No hidden fees, no hidden features. $25 to do it yourself, and a state or several states. I challenge you to find another platform that'll do that. And if you need some extra help, there's an assisted approach to doing it yourself as well. So you don't really have, any limitations as to getting your taxes done, whether you want to hire someone or do it yourself. But you do need to go with tip number 1, file as soon as possible. And tip number 2, be ready. Don't count on an extension, and make it the easiest way possible for you. It's just smart business right now because of the time constraint, all the tax law changes that happened in 2026, and all the stuff that you've got to juggle in your personal life. So outsource it to someone who likes to do taxes. Get it done today. My last tip is a really simple one as well. It's not hugely complicated, but a lot of people at this time have put it off, and they start to feel the stresses of time and the stresses of the single largest financial transaction. Don't panic. There's plenty of time left in the calendar for the tax season. And by that, I mean 26 days from today. Not a lot of time, but time to manage it. You've got certainly a lot of tax pros out there. There's, not millions of us, but thousands and tens of thousands of us in the tax business. Many of us have extended hours. We've got extended staffing. We've got new enhanced tools, and we're ready for this. So take advantage of it, and don't panic, and find a resource that you like. And as I said from the start, it may sound repetitive, but get started with a plan. Get a calendar event on your calendar of when to do it. Get organized, find your documents. Now that it's a little bit past January 31st, some of that stuff may have made itself into other drawers or other envelopes, but find your information and commit to getting your taxes prepared. As I said from the start, tens of millions have already filed. Refunds are processing. There is not a backlog like there was last year yet, but with 26 days to go and tens of millions of taxpayers lining up to get their taxes done, you don't want to be caught in that last minute crunch. So get organized, get a plan, and get started. And as again, I said in a little bit of repetitiveness, the extension, not the master thing that you might think it is, by virtue of the fact that it is not an extension of time to pay your taxes. It's an extension of time to file your paperwork. And 3 out of 4 getting a refund, that could be you as well. So file as early as you can, get your documents. An extension doesn't happen. And the last tip, I've covered this in a couple of our others, but it bears repeating as well as a part of the overall best practice for getting your taxes done, getting your taxes to the IRS on time and by the deadline, and most importantly, getting your refund into your pocket as fast as possible. There's 2 things you need to keep in mind above everything else. Whether you hire Jackson Hewitt, whether you hire another tax pro, whether you do it yourself, or whatever your option is for getting your taxes done. And that is tip number 1, file your taxes electronically. You want to file your taxes electronically, which is not to prepare it on a computer. A lot of people say, I do mine on a computer every year, and then I mail it in. That is not what file electronically means. Filing electronically means, yes, put the return on a computer. You almost have to have a computer these days. The taxes are so complicated. And then press the button and send it to the IRS electronically. It gets there immediately, so it's not stuck in your mailbox or in their truckload of tax returns. 2, there's some automatic checks that happen, both with your tax pro, your tax software, and at the IRS. If you fat fingered or somehow made a mistake on a social security number for a new family member, a new dependent. So there's some fast checks. Your data is immediately locked at the IRS and at the state. So it's safer from that perspective. And ultimately, it's more accurate. So electronically file. Prep it on a return computer and send it. Part 2 of the most efficient way to get your taxes done is electronically deposit your tax refund. As I said, 3 out of 4 taxpayers are enjoying a refund this year and every year. Refunds are up this year, at least so far, about 13%. And so if you electronically file, electronically deposit your tax refund into a bank account. Now, we recognize tens of millions of people are unbanked for a variety of reasons, personal choice and other, but what you'll find is there's a lot of financial opportunities. Whether you set up a temporary account yourself or your favorite tax pro, or like we have at Jackson Hewitt, you can get a temporary bank account and get that money electronically, even if it's just short term. You don't have to set up a permanent, savings account forever till you die. You can get a short term electronic funded bank product that will take your tax refund electronically rather than the snail mail. Now, while we're saying best practices are electronically file and electronically deposit, the death sentence case is you paper mail a tax return in, and then you paper get a tax refund. You're talking weeks, if not months, and that's under the happy day unicorn riding down a rainbow scenario of no mistakes, no questions, no issues. If any of those happen and you've paper filed, you'll just be starting to flip-flop back and forth email correspondence with the IRS. So file as soon as you can. Be prepared with all your documents, whether you see your tax pro or you're doing it yourself. Don't be thinking an extension is going to save you. Find the easiest way to find a pro to get it done that way. And most importantly, electronically file and electronically deposit, even if you have to set up an electronic bank account temporarily. Those tips will get you your tax refund like the 50 or so million people that have already done and been funded very effectively and very efficiently. And so this is not just hyperbole or made up. It works. We see it. We see it at Jackson Hewitt every day. Follow those guidelines, and I promise you'll have a better experience. Now we got a few questions popping up here, so clearly we've got some people joining. First question I have is from a person that says, when is the filing deadline and is it likely to be moved? Well, the deadline is typically April 15th every year. You've heard that from every, comedic era show to, your favorite tax person. This year, it's not. There's an extra 3 days this year due to the Emancipation holiday in D.C. and a couple of others in Massachusetts for a couple of other reasons. But April 18th is your deadline for most taxpayers this year. Now, there's some disaster areas, and as I say, Maine and Massachusetts have an extra day for Patriots Day, but most of you can look to April 18th. But keep in mind two things. The April 18th deadline is also on Monday after the Easter holiday weekend. So there's Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday. There may be some challenges, if a lot of people wait to the last minute combined with that holiday. So get in front of that headache and don't think you've got extra time. The second question that the person asked, are they likely to move the deadline? I can tell you unequivocally that is unlikely. The IRS has messaged that. The political operatives have messaged that. And quite frankly, in the last 2 years where they did move the deadline, there was a much more severe pandemic going on. That seems to have subsided, at least largely in many states and locations. And by then, the IRS had already announced it. So it would be unprecedented to announce a delay in season this year, given the state of affairs that we're going through, even with some of the other geopolitical events, and they've waited so long. So I think you can look at April 18th to be the hard deadline this year, and that's about 26 days, 9 hours from now, Eastern time. I would get after that. Another question we have is all income taxable, even tips? Now, again, we get this question quite a bit, and we get it when we're talking with tax payers that come in. I didn't bring that item in, or I don't have to pay tax on that. It was under $600, or those were tips. That is simply not the rule. That may be the practice in some places where your Uncle Bob's giving you tax guidance, but you can rest assured from Mark Stieber, all taxable income, unless it's specifically excluded, and there are items, life insurance, inheritance, things like that. But generally income, no matter how small, even those betting pools with March Madness, are taxable under the law. And you need to include those, especially and most importantly, if you've worked for somebody and whether you got the 1099 or the W-2 or not, or you moved or had a bad address, if they sent that information to the IRS and you leave it off, there's going to be a mismatch. And not only will there be a mismatch that could ultimately get you a notice or a letter, it could probably add days or weeks or months to your refund timing, your ordinary refund timing. And as I say, 9 out of 10, 21 days or less. But if you have a piece of information that's mismatched or is not on the tax return and the IRS has to go and do an error resolution search for it and try to figure out what's right, you could be looking at some of what we saw last year, which is that 30 million taxpayers in the backlog, and some of those are still getting processed. You may have seen that on the news. So be accurate. No guesstimates, no estimates, no I kind of remember, and no, I'm just not going to tell my pro because it was a small amount and that 1099 really doesn't count. Those rules don't work any longer. The IRS has gotten very sophisticated technologically. They see those numbers and they see those amounts. And even things like cryptocurrency, which is still kind of a gray area to a lot of people. You don't get a 1099 per se from some of them. It's still optional. That's taxable to the extent you have gains. And the IRS is keying in on that as well. Something else to keep in mind, as the world gets more complicated. Another question we get here, I owe money. Should I extend? Well, as I said to start with, extending is a good thing if you're missing a piece of documentation that you'll use to refine your tax return, but it's not an extension of time to pay. Now, having said that, I'll hit on another quick point here as time's running out on us. If you can't pay your taxes, whatever else you hear today, or if you ever watched one of these before, you do not have a get out of jail free card on all of your tax filing responsibility or obligation. At a minimum, you need to file your tax return, even if you can't pay. That will stop the failure to file penalty. And there's several penalties, but failure to file is separate from failure to pay. And if you file your taxes, you'll get half the penalty ignored, the penalty to file. You filed. If you don't pay, you still have penalty and penalty risk, unless you have some reasons for hardship or other things. But you can separate the two penalties and at least eliminate part of your risk. As to the I can't pay part, I certainly get that. A lot of people in economic difficulties, the pandemic's been kind to no one. But I'll simply say this. If you can't afford to pay, and if you can't afford to find the money in your own cash or put it on a credit card or a short-term loan or even a financial product that many tax companies offer, the IRS also has several filing opportunities to put money on a payment plan that are agreeable both in size and term and how long you can pay, and they work very friendly for a lot of taxpayers. And so I would tell you, don't look past the IRS tools to pay a balance due if you're one of those unlucky 1 out of 4 that did not get the refund. So watch for that, but do not ignore it no matter how perilous you think your situation is. And if you're in fact not able to pay, I'm just going to ignore it. You'll double, if not triple, the amount of problems that you're going to have to clean up, after the fact. And the IRS will ultimately find their way to your doorstep and any money or assets that you have. So ignoring it, kind of like an IRS notice or an IRS letter, it's not your best practice, and it certainly will not go away, and it certainly will not get cheaper. And there's plenty of resources and people to help you out there. Another question I got. One of my jobs closed last year. Now, what I heard you say is I still have to put that on there. Yeah, absolutely, you have to put it on there, because even if they closed and didn't send you a W-2, that doesn't mean the information didn't make its way over to the IRS, either part of their quarterly filings as a company or even their annual year-end closing summary that they sent to the IRS in the way of a W-2 and W-3. Just because you didn't get it doesn't mean they didn't get it. And so if you know you have some income, you've got several options. The IRS has thought about this long and hard, and many pros are familiar with the substitute W-2 option. You can use your final pay stub. Heck, you can even use an estimate on a napkin if it's really close and really kind of accurate, and you put it together with a good pro and then put that on your tax return. And if it's close to the IRS number, you're in much less trouble than just leaving it off and having the IRS figure it out. But being accurate is important. And if you didn't get the document, that's still not a get out of jail free card that you don't have to put it on your tax return. So be sure you tell your pro, I had a job, I had a W-2 coming, the company went bankrupt, went out of business, whatever the reason is, and you can't just call them or download it like you might with an ongoing business. What do I do? Substitute W-2. It's an easy thing to do. Another question that somebody got as they heard this answer. I didn't put it on there because I didn't know that. What do I do now? I've already filed. Well, you got a couple of options, being that we're still ahead of April 18th. You can't really send in, the original return, but you can send in a revised return or an amended return, even depending on if you're talking about this year or last year. So when you find out a problem, there's several options to fix it, depending on if it's the current tax year and you just sent in your tax return, or if it was a prior year tax return and you're still trying to clean that up, but you haven't really been notified yet. And it may be one of those 30 million stuck in the backlog, that you're trying to get yourself out of because you left off the W-2. There are things you can do there that start with an amended return, but could even make itself into a currently alternatively filed tax return. So get it done quickly, get it done as fast as you can, and you reduce any type of penalty and interest. And at a minimum, you'll have a good story to tell should you want to abate or risk or ask for a rate abatement on your penalties and interest. If you have a better story that as soon as you found out about it, you tried to fix it, the IRS has been very, very, very forgiving on these instances. So I would tell your pro that, and ultimately you'll probably get some better traction. Final couple of questions here as we're running up on time. How do I find out what the status of my refund is? Well, we covered this in one of our prior Tax Talk Lives, and I will say the first step is the Where's My Refund tool, at the irs.gov website. The second is talk to your tax pro system. At Jackson Hewitt and others, we have a Jackson Hewitt mailbox that we can give you updates on. And if neither one of those give you satisfaction or you can't figure it out, an ID Me account is how you set up a personal individual tax account with the IRS to see really into what's going on with your situation. And a tax pro can help you with that as well. But there's a lot of ways to get information if you have questions and your return hasn't processed like you like, or as you go through the system and you file your tax return very shortly after this broadcast, because you now have figured out, I need to go file, I need to get my money, 3 out of 4, up 13%. Why would I not file? I'll finish by saying, please go out to our website at jacksonhewitt.com. Go to YouTube, pull up some of our videos on these or other topics you might have missed in the past. Be more aware of your taxes and your single largest financial transaction, and you'll get a bigger refund. It's that simple, but you have to be involved. You have to be engaged. You have to use somebody with tax knowledge. You have to use technology. We have all that here, and you have some of it as well. So get your taxes done if you're one of those 100 million or so, and get it done today. The lines are getting bigger, I promise you, as you get closer to April 18th, and you don't want to be caught up in that, again, on your single largest financial transaction. So from all of us at Jackson Hewitt and our 6,000 locations and our 20,000 people, we look forward to seeing you and helping you with your taxes. So come see us. And again, thank you for your time today, and we'll see you on the next Tax Talk Live.